Alright, in the last video on Bergson, I discussed, the first parts of the chapter 1 of Matter and Memory, which I have here. And basically, in that last video, I discussed realism and idealism, why Bergson in the first chapter just kind of says that then both are wrong. And I think he does it in a pretty awesome way. Personally, I think it's just all around badass. I just love it, And I honestly think Bergson should be studied more. It should be read and studied a lot more. And I've recently purchased Matter and Memory on Kindle, but this is a library book, and while I have it, I'm gonna do videos after reading out of it. So in this video, I want to discuss what he's talking about in this first chapter of perception and memory, and consciousness, basically. So, let's see, I'm going to go to 28. Perception has a wholly speculative interest. It is pure knowledge. The whole discussion turns upon the importance of to be attributed to this knowledge as compared with scientific knowledge. It's impossible, like I said, like I just discussed in the last video, how it says that it's impossible to assume anything other than the aggregate of images. So, like, I was kind of trying to show how this correlates a little bit with the phenomenological agenda of Edmund Husserl. Page 35. To deduce consciousness would be indeed a bold undertaking, but it is really not necessarily here, because positing the material world, we assume an aggregate of images, and moreover, because it is impossible to assume anything else. It is true that an image may be without being perceived, and it may be present without being represented. And the distance between these two terms, presence and representation, seems just a measure of the interval between matter itself and our conscious perception of matter. And then page 38. This is as much to say that there is for images a merely difference of degree, not of kind, between being and being consciously perceived. The reality of matter consists in the totality of elements and their actions of every kind. Our representation of matter is the measure of our possible action upon bodies. That's kind of like I said in the last video about Heidegger, how about things ready to hand. Like how we understand a book as to how we can read it. Whereas our consciousness only attains certain parts, and to certain aspects of those parts. Consciousness in regard to external perception lies in this choice. In one sense, we might say that the perception of any unconscious material point, whatever in its instantaneousness, is infinitely greater and more complete than ours, since this point gathers and transmits the influences of all the points of the material universe. Consciousness, in regard to external perception, lies in this choice, but there is in this necessary poverty of our conscious perception something that is positive, that foretells spirit. It is in the etymological sense of the word discernment. Okay. Matter is potential of okay. I need to go further in the book. Yeah, there's a period of the book where I don't really discuss this. I need 66. Okay, but we have to take into account the fact that our body is not a mathematical point in space, that its virtual actions are complicated by and impregnated with real actions, or in other words, there is no perception with affection. Affection is then that part or aspect of the inside of our body which we mix with the image of external bodies. It is what we must first of all subtract from perception to get the image in its purity. So that's affection. Now, I think that kind of gives a good idea of what perception really is. It's somewhat of a trying to perceive it in its as it is without really anything else affecting it. Bergson basically says that consciousness is that which bridges between past and future, and consciousness and perception carries with it always memories. It's always laden with memory. And that's something I'm going to get to here. I'm just trying to read all the stuff that I've written down and underlined in order to get to you what I need to get to you, so I haven't forgotten. The truth is that affection is not the primary matter of which perception is made. It is rather the impurity with which perception is alloyed. Memory is the survival of past images. We assert at the outset that if there be memory, the survival of past images, these images must constantly mingle with our perception of the present and may even take its place. For if they survive, it is with a view to utility. At every moment they complete our present experience, enriching it with experience already acquired, and as the latter is ever increasing, it must end by covering up and submerging the former. So think about this, and then if you've read Husserl's Phenomenology of the Consciousness of Internal Time, you'll kind of understand this, how the present is impregnated with past and future. Now, Bergson kind of emphasizes the past a little bit, memory, the survival of past images, that impregnates itself into presence and consciousness. Consciousness is itself, what Bergson's calling presence. It's a kind of presence. A temporal now is a lot of what consciousness is to him and what pure perception is to him. Our perceptions are undoubtedly interlaced with memories, and inversely, a memory only becomes actual by borrowing the body of some perception into which it slips. These two acts, perception and recollection, always interpenetrate each other, always exchanging something of their substance by process and of endosmosis. 68, 69. The actuality of our perception lies in its activity, in the movements which prolong it, and not in its greater intensity. The past is only idea. The present is idea motor. Realism, in fact, the invariable order of phenomena of nature, lies in its cause distinct from our perceptions, whether this cause remains unknowable, or whether we can reach it by an effort. If we follow to the end of the principle according to which the subjectivity of our perception consists, above all in the share taken by memory, we shall say that even the sensible qualities of matter will be known in themselves from within and not from without. Could we but disengage from that particular rhythm of duration which characterizes our consciousness? Pure perception, in fact, however rapid we suppose it to be, occupies a certain depth of duration, so that our successive perceptions are never the real moments of things as we have hitherto supposed, but are moments of our consciousness. Theoretically, we said the part played by consciousness is in external perception would be to join together by the continuous thread of memory instantaneous visions of the real. But in fact, there is for us nothing that is instantaneous. In all that goes by that name, there's already some work of our memory, and consequently our consciousness. our consciousness, which prolongs into each other so as to grasp them in. One relatively simple intuition on an endless number of moments in an endlessly divisible time. Subject and object would unite in an extended perception. The subjective side of perception would begin contradiction affected by memory. Questions relating to subject and object and to the distinction of the union should be put in terms of time rather than space. Okay, so more than that should be finished here. For it is possible to sum up our conclusions as to pure perception by saying that there is in matter something more than, but not something different from, that which is actually given. There is in matter something more than, but not something different from, what is actually given. Undoubtedly, conscious perception does not compass the whole of matter, since it consists in the separation or discernment of that which in matter interests our various needs. Okay. It's like in my video, I've just, in this work, Husserl in his book, Experience and Judgment, in part in that book, he says that given a certain, thing that we perceive, we can't perceive everything that is. We can't perceive everything that a certain thing is. We only perceive a certain snippet of it, So, what to him is perception? First of all, it's related to consciousness, and it's kind of like how the now is kind of constantly rolls into the past. And even as you start to perceive something, you're already working in memory immediately. So past was really related to the future in terms of consciousness. So memory is laden within that stuff. It's inherently together. Same with subject and object. They're put together in terms of time, not in space. And how does that work? The subject and the object, they're related in terms of time as to, how they kind of mold together. I think Bergson kind of best discusses that. There is more, but nothing different from what is perceived. So it's like, there's more to it, but there's nothing different from it. There's no, there's nothing beyond what we're seeing, but there's, more, there's more than what we're seeing, but there's nothing different. If you can kind of wrap your head around that. Perception is, possible action upon all of the images. So, perception is heavily related to memory. It's kind of just really related to all that stuff. So, and it's kind of need to really think about. So, I should be doing the second chapter, in a couple of videos or so. If you have any question about this, please do let me know, because I really enjoyed talking about this, really. So if you have any questions, or you want to just talk about it, I will gladly be wanting to. Thank you.